Well, hello there. It's great to see you back on the channel. You know what? One of the things that I enjoy most about this YouTube channel is the interaction I get to have with you guys below each video. And today's video, well, I'm showing your images once again. Yeah, I've still got, it seems like I've got hundreds of these images still on my computer ready to go. And I totally apologize to you guys who may have sent them in weeks and weeks ago and I haven't featured them yet. It's not because I don't want to, it's because I just can't possibly fit them all in one or two videos. So please bear with me. I'll try and work my way through them as best as I can. But anyway, stay tuned because I've got some more great images to show you here today. So let's get to them. Our first image today is from Hayman from South Dakota in the United States. And this image, well, Roy says he's attaching a recent Nightscape image. And if it's worthy enough to be featured in the video, I'd be honored. But more importantly, I'd really appreciate your honest critique. Thanks again for sharing the knowledge and images. Big fan in South Dakota. Well, thanks heaps, Roy. Now, as far as critique, there's not a lot that I want to critique. I love this image. I particularly love the way that you've transitioned the lighting of the foreground into the background, medium foreground part of the image, if you know what I mean. And I really like this. So this was shot with a Canon R5 with a Sigma 20mm f1.4 lens. He shot one single image for the sky at f1.4, 10-second shutter speed at ISO 6400. With the foreground, he's shot 4 light painted images at f8, 10-second shutter speeds at ISO 500. And so he's got a really sharp, crisp image. I particularly love the water that's running through the image, but I really like the way the light falls off on those trees heading back into the background. So all in all, I think this image is really, really nice, Roy. I don't want to criticize it. There's nothing I don't like about the image. I think you've done a marvelous job, my friend. We now have a sequence of images from Ibraham Ruste from Iraq. And this first one with the tree, with the Milky Way behind, beautiful image, Nikon D850 with a 50mm f1.8 lens. Now he said here that this is 8 tracked sky exposures at ISO 1000, f2.5 aperture at 8-second shutter speed. Now he hasn't mentioned anything about the foreground, but there's something shot there obviously, otherwise it would be blurry. But that is a really, really nice shot indeed. And there's a number of images that Ibraham has sent through. This next one, which is the star trails with the tree, this is also with the D850. He shot 104 images for these star trails, 30-second shutter speeds, ISO 1250. This is shot with the 24-120 f4 lens. So this is in northern Iraq, the Kurdistan region. So that's a lovely image. It looks like to me there might have been a little bit of moonlight around, so there's a fair bit of lighting there on the foreground. And you can see these other images. There's a bit of a combination here. This first one with the Milky Way core rising over the landscape. There's a bit of a tree, a bush there in the foreground. He hasn't given me much information for this one, so I'll just show you the images and you can admire them for yourself. Here's another star trail with this tree. I love the way that tree is centered directly under the North Celestial Pole. Gorgeous round star trails. There, again, looks like a bit of moonlight in that foreground region, but I really, really like it. Here's a selfie up on a hill. Now, I'm assuming these are all taken with the Nikon D850, but it looks like these aren't the 50mm lens, so it's possibly still at 24-120. But he hasn't actually told me on this one, but nevertheless, these are really, really good. And we head over to the United Kingdom, and this is Damien Burton from Liverpool in the UK. And this is a recent image he took at the South Stack Lighthouse in North Wales in the United Kingdom. It's a time blend of 5 blue hour images and 15 sky frames stacked in Starry Landscape Stacker, blended in Camera Raw and Photoshop. Now, Damien hasn't told me what camera or lens that he's used, but nevertheless, I'd be guessing somewhere around about 20 to 24mm, but that's only a guess. And it's quite an interesting, it looks like there's a bit of fog there on the horizon, but there's a lot of detail. Possibly that Milky Way might be slightly over edited only because It's all a matter of blending in with what foreground you have in the scene. Other than that, I think the image is great. What a fantastic location this is. I would love to get there one day and have a look at that, but thank you so much, Damien. Really appreciate you sending this image through. And now we head over to the United States, and this is Hubert Jones from New Mexico. And he sent me two images here. And this first one that we're looking at now, this is taken at Alamogordo in New Mexico. I don't know if I got that right. Now, this is looks like a very arid landscape, a couple of nice trees there in the foreground. Now, I can see there's a fair bit of amp glow on that tree on the left-hand side. So he hasn't told me what camera he's using or what lens, so I can't really comment too much about that. What I would suggest there, Hubert, is a little bit longer shutter speed, longer exposure on those foregrounds, and you'll get rid of that glow and you won't have to push the shadow detail so much. Love the composition. I think it's really nice having the Milky Way core between those two trees. And this next image, wow, there's light pollution there on the horizon, but it looks sort of like the Milky Way's coming out of that light pollution. So there's obviously a city there somewhere. There's also a bit of light happening on the foreground, and yeah, this is New Mexico, I'd say, at its greatest. There's a nice hills, very arid desert plain type foreground there, but I like it. I like it, Hubert. Thanks so much for sending him through. And so we find our way back to Australia, and this is from Alan Williams. Now, Alan has sent this through. This was a picture taken near Patchywallach. Now, Patchywallach is in the middle of nowhere, I can tell you that. And he went there to photograph birds, but he took this image of the water tank up there on the stand, and it looks gorgeous. This is taken with a Canon 6D Mark II and a Canon 16-35 f2.8 lens at 24mm focal length. He shot 10 images at ISO 2500, 20 second shutter speed at f2.8. Then he shot 2 at ISO 2500, 15 seconds and f5.6. So he followed my process using Lightroom, Sequator and Photoshop to get the final image. And I think you've done a spectacular job here, Alan. It's a rising Milky Way galactic core. So this was probably taken early in the year, I would imagine. And I love the sideways lighting onto the foreground. Gives it that beautiful texture. And that's what I think we're always looking for when we do our light painted foregrounds. Great job, Al. Our next image comes from George Caselica from Sandpoint, Idaho. This is shot with a Nikon D850 and the 14-24 f2.8 lens. It's shot at 14mm. It's a single image at ISO 5000, 13 second shutter speed. He's very inspired. He just started astrophotography about 2 months ago, and he took this only last weekend, which was probably a little while ago because I've been taking a while to get through these images. But nevertheless, he's thanking me for the inspiration, and I thank you very much, George, for sending this gorgeous image through. I love the way that the light goes from that yellow to green. Now, I'm sure it's probably not necessarily that much green. There might be a little bit of oversaturation in the image, but I still like the gradient of the lighting coming off that cloud and the gorgeous lake and the mountain in the foreground. So it's a simple shot, but it still has enough elements going on to draw us into the image. And I think that's the whole key when we're looking at any photograph. So thanks a heap, George. Really appreciate you sending it through. Now I've got this beautiful image of a case loader here from Reuben Monreal. Now I don't know where Reuben comes from. He hasn't told me. So I can't do much about that. It appears to be somewhere that speaks Spanish. So it could be Spain, could be South America somewhere, I don't know. But anyway, this is shot with a Nikon D5200. So it's a crop sensor with a Tokina 11-20 f2.8 lens. And he shot 4 photos of the actual machine illuminated with a flashlight and 2 background sky photos stacked, mixed in Lightroom. And I particularly love the light painting on the case tractor. I think it looks really good. It's vibrant and it's not blowing out anywhere. It's a really good soft light, and yet it's got all of the detail. And you know, that's all we're really looking for. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think Reuben's done a really good job in this case. Thanks heaps. Now I've got a couple of really beautiful images here from Marcus Odegaard, and Marcus is from Queensland here in Australia, and he's enjoying these videos that I'm showing people's work, and I appreciate the fact that you sent these two in, Marcus. So this shot is of virgin rock situated above Springsure in central Queensland. He's using his ever reliable Nikon Z6 and a matching 20mm lens, and he shot, well, it was 2 degrees, so it was very cold, gusting 10 knot winds. He shot 5 foreground shots at f/16 for 3 minutes at ISO 640. So they're extra long exposure shots, and you can see the detail that he's getting there. Quite beautiful. And he shot 5 shots of the sky at f2.2, 20-second shutter speed at ISO 6400, all edited in Lightroom and Photoshop. As always, Richard, I love your work and look forward to running an Astro workshop up this way one day. Well, maybe I'll get there, who knows. We've got this second image here, which is also very, very nice indeed. It's an abandoned service station, once a golden fleece, and he recalls visiting this, traveling with his family as a young fella, located just north of Rockhampton, right on the highway, hence the light pollution. But he took advantage of the light to light the building coming from a truck rest area, which was across the other side of the highway. This is shot also with a 20mm and a Z6, 5-shot foreground at f8, 3-minute shutter speeds. So he's using those long exposure foregrounds, which is working really well in these cases. Again, 5 shots for the sky at f2.2, 20-second shutter speeds at ISO 6400. So there's 2 marvelous images there from Marcus from Australia. Absolutely love them. And we're back to the USA, and this is Mike Crapo, and this is shot in Birch Creek charcoal kilns in Idaho, USA, as a foreground subject. These kilns were built in 1886 near the town of Leodore in Idaho, and they produce charcoal, etc., to fuel a smelter for lead and silver mine. What a great find this is. So he shot this using an Olympus OM1 with an Olympus 17mm f1.2, stopped down to f2 to remove some vignetting. He shot these at ISO 6400, 15-second shutter speed. So the Milky Way was shot in 3 rows, 9 panels per row, and 5 shots per panel. So this is 135 Milky Way photos in total, stacked in sequator. The panoramic was then stitched using Photoshop and edited in Photoshop again and Lightroom. So the foreground shots were shot at f1.2, ISO 800, 10-second shutter speed, and there was about 8 shots used to get all the lighting right. Flashlight was used for the white light, and 2 of those Ulanzi VL49 LED light panels were set to red. 3% power to produce a red glow in the kilns, and that's very effective. And he says, by the way, thanks for the great tip on these lights, they're awesome. Well, they are certainly awesome. So he blended these using Photoshop, and I think he's done a fantastic job. That's a really beautiful image. The composition he was going for was to have the Milky Way galactic core coming out and bursting forth from the kilns themselves, and that's exactly what he's achieved here. So thank you very much, Mike. I've noticed you're commenting on my channel a few times, and I appreciate your support, my friend. We're now heading to Slovakia, and this image is from Ludovic Navratil. Now, he hasn't told me the camera he's used, but he did tell me the lens he used. So it's a Sigma 12 to 24mm at the 12mm end. He took 14 light frames for the sky, 5 dark frames as well at 20 seconds, f4 ISO 5000. And then around about 15 light painted frames for the foreground at 20 seconds, f6.3 at ISO 1000. But he says he only used maybe 10 of them. Everything was stacked in sequator, edited in Lightroom and Photoshop. And at the end, he applied Topaz denoise to clean up the noise around the image. Thanks a lot for your work. Well, look, thank you very much, Ludovic. Now, it's interesting, he's mentioned that he took about 15 frames of the foreground, but only used about 10. You know, that happens to me all the time. And I think it's important to take as many shots as you think you may need, but rarely do I use all of the shots. And sometimes I want to deliberately darken off areas of the shot. And in this case, perhaps it could benefit from having a little less light on that tree, so it blends more into the dark foreground. But nevertheless, I like the subject matter. Love the effort that he's gone to, and I think this is a good image. That Milky Way, now one of the things that I would suggest about an image such as this, when you've got a Milky Way galactic core, you don't want that cigar shape of the Milky Way. You want it to blend in on the edges, and I see it a lot, and it's easy to do. So I would probably just tone down that editing on that Milky Way core a little bit, just so that it blends in a little bit better with the blue sky in the background. But nevertheless, I do really enjoy the image. Thanks heaps. Our next image brings us back to Australia, and this is from Carmel Thompson. And she says, "Hi Richard, I've finally got a Sony image for you." Wow, she was worried that I didn't have enough Sony images featured on my channel. Well, I'll feature any brand of camera. If someone has Sony images that they want to send me through, I'll be very happy to take them. So anyway, this panorama is 2 rows of about 7 or 8 shots each row, taken with the Sony a7 III with a 20mm G lens at f2.5, 10-second shutter speed, ISO 3200. Now I know that's a good lens because I have that lens myself. Merged in Photoshop, edited in both Photoshop and Lightroom. So this is a cottage called Mary's Cottage, and she was there, and it was actually Christmas Eve, so that's quite appropriate, isn't it? And I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I love the lighting on the foreground, and I think this is a cow paddock, and she says she drove past there were cows there, but she was worried about the cows. But luckily, there were no cows here that night. You had the place to yourself. Well, fantastic, Carmel. Love the image. I think you've done a marvelous job, and go the Sonys. Okay, so our final contributor to today's episode is from Malcolm Hare in the United Kingdom, from Yorkshire. And Malcolm is a very great supporter of my channel here, so thank you for sending these through, Malcolm. Now the problem is, Malcolm hasn't told me what camera or lens he's used. So all he's sent me is these beautiful images, but I just had to show you. They are tremendously well lit, and I just love the way that he's incorporated the shape of the buildings and made these tall buildings stand out so well against the sky. Now sometimes there's not a whole lot of stars in the sky, but that's often the way it is in the UK, and I think what Malcolm's done very well here, he's lit the foregrounds to the extent that it draws your eye into the foreground image regardless of what the sky is showing in the background. And I really like it. I particularly like the way that he's lit the foreground of this shot here with the blue wispy sky and then the light polluted yellow clouds, which are a reflection around the town. But you know what? I really do like just a little bit of light pollution like this because it adds so much to the image. And I also like the way that he's worked out his color balance in these foreground shots, because it's not easy. Sometimes when you've got stray light around from towns and things like that, that can color the images in a way that you don't want. But I think these are absolutely fantastic, Malcolm. Thank you so much. So there you go, there's another great collection of images, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to have a look here again today on the channel. So I've got a few things happening here on the channel. Speaking of which, it's just starting to rain once again. I can't get away from the rain at the moment. It's been so wet, even though the sun's out. Anyway, I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. So until then, have a fantastic week. See you later.